Good evening. This is the New Dawn FM News in English, read to you by Dolores Talasi. First, the headlines. President makes clarification on the national government funds to Bougainville. ABG's finance team to provide acquittal reports for the 50 million kina funding boost for PNG's provincial health authorities COVID-19 response. Bougainville State of Emergency Controller apologizes to passengers and schools in Bougainville to remain closed. Now the news in detail. The Honorable President Dr. John Mommies has refuted alleged claim raised in a Post-Courier article on the 22nd of April 2020 about the misuse of funds totaling 50 million kina that was given by the national government. President Mommies clarifies that the 2019 Public Investment Program had an allocation of 50 million kina for three major road networks in Bougainville: Bukaring Road, Kokopau to Arawa, and Kiata to Buin Road, which these funds are directly managed by the National Department of Works. The Honorable President further clarifies that the total of 50 million kina, according to the National Department of Works, was not received in full last year, with a balance of approximately 20 million kina yet to be paid to the National Department of Works. Dr. Mommy said based on this, the ABG does not have any direct control over these funds as it is managed by the National Department of Works. Honorable Mommies also clarifies that the Prime Minister made a commitment to the people of Bougainville for 50 million kina, and these funds were earmarked for 6 main projects across Bougainville, namely Bukaring Road Ceiling, Kokopau to Arawa Road, Arawa Kiata to Buin Road, infrastructures for Arawa School of Nursing and the Bougainville Technical College, and post-referendum consultations and dialogue with the national government. He said as the president, he would like to confirm and clarify that of the 50 million kina, only 35 million was received in 2 tranches. A first tranche of 25 million kina was received in January 2020. A second of 10 million kina was received in March 2020. He added that the balance of 15 million kina is yet to be received. President Dr. John Mommies, refuting alleged misuse of 50 million kina given to the ABG by the national government, says the ABG under the Bougainville Peace Agreement and the Bougainville Constitution is fully committed to ensure the highest standards of good governance. Dr. Mommies clarifies that the Bougainville House of Representatives passed its supplementary budget in February this year, where 4 new projects were added by reducing the allocation for the Kokopau to Arawa Road to only scoping work. The 4 additional projects mentioned are the ABG General Elections for 2020, Treasury Education Fees, Secondary and Vocational School Support, and Atoll Shipping. The President said the new projects were added to the supplementary budget following consultations between himself as the President and the Prime Minister, with this consultative process ensured that the funds expenditure was agreed to at the highest level. He confirms that despite ABG receiving 35 million kina, only 23.5 million kina was issued in warrant authorities with an expenditure of 19,310,067 kina to implement projects, namely Bukaring Road, Arawa to Buin Road, Bougainville Technical College, ABG elections for 2020, and support to secondary and vocational schools. He said the ABG's finance, in consultation with their national counterparts, will provide acquittal reports for the funds received and expended to date this week. Dr. Mommy said ABG are on a united but difficult mission to move Bougainville from an autonomous government to independence, and it will do this by following the principles of good governance, transparency, and accountability, and the decisions made are based on evidence and expert advice, which are always done in the best interest of the people of Bougainville. It concluded that ABG welcomes any investigation to be done by the National Audit Team so answers can be found why the 15 million kina commitments was not paid in full. The Australian government has committed around 21.4 million kina in funding to Papua New Guinea's provincial health authorities and the autonomous Bougainville government to support provincial COVID-19 preparedness and response activities. Supported by the Papua New Guinea Australia Partnership and the National Department of Health, this funding will assist provincial health authorities to progress implementation of provincial COVID-19 emergency response plan and reduce the spread among communities. Australian High Commissioner John Philp said provincial health authorities are on the front line with the communities who will be most affected by COVID-19, making difficult decisions on how to prioritize limited funding, and they are pleased to be able to support them in this effort. The Minister for Health and HIV and AIDS, Jalta Wong, said he welcomed support of the government and people of Australia for much needed assistance at this difficult time. All the provincial health authorities are now in place, and this assistance will go a long way in building their capacity as frontline in the provinces while learning from COVID-19 pandemic. Funds will support surveillance, clinical management, and infection prevention and control. These include staff training and recruitment, and the establishment of triaging, quarantine and isolation facilities, as well as waste management and disposal. The funding will also support a rapid response team and surveillance at airports, ports, and land borders. Australia remains committed to working with Papua New Guinea in its effort to prevent spread of the COVID-19. You are listening to the New Dawn FM News. The State of Emergency Controller in Bougainville, Francis Tokora, has sent his apologies to the 11 passengers who flew back to Port Moresby after they were not allowed to disembark the plane at the Buka airport on Saturday last weekend. Mr. Tokora sends his apology to the 11 passengers and their relatives who have been waiting at the airport and advised that the state of emergency orders on domestic flights into Bougainville have not been lifted. As stated in the Bougainville State of Emergency Orders, he said passengers are not allowed until the quarantine facilities and personal protective equipment are in place. Mr. Tokora said the plane was not expected to carry any passengers to Buka but medical supplies only. He said he is very strict on enforcing the orders because he and the other frontliners will be the ones to be blamed if any case is confirmed in Bougainville. Mr. Tokora said he will not be let down by people criticizing him on social media, but work faithfully as a mandated controller to make sure innocent Bougainvilleans are safe from the COVID-19. Schools in Bougainville are to remain closed, but teachers are to resume duties starting today to prepare themselves based on the programs that will be compiled by the ABG Health Secretary, teachers, and education officers. According to the State of Emergency Controller in Bougainville, Mr. Francis Tokora, the Education Secretary and his officers are working on the programs that will be implemented to allow schools to resume. Mr. Tokora said without the programs by the Department of Education, the restrictions of having the schools closed won't be lifted. He appeals to the Bougainvilleans to obey and comply with state of emergency orders, maintain social distancing, and urge and urge the people to stay at home if they have nothing to do in towns. This has been the New Dawn FM News in English. You can also see our news on www.bougainvillenews.com, www.bougainville.typepad.com. You can also follow us on Facebook and Twitter. You can also listen to us on the New Dawn FM YouTube page. On behalf of the news team, I am Dolores Talassi. You have a pleasant evening.